I still remember the day everything changed like it's etched into the inside of my eyelids. It was a gray Tuesday, the kind of day where the coffee tastes like cardboard and the rain on the diner windows looks like it's in no hurry to stop. My name's Shermonica Reed, and back then I was just another waitress pulling doubles at a roadside grill in Newark. My mom was sick, the rent was overdue, and I was one write-up away from getting canned by my boss, a man who liked to remind me of my place every time he passed. He came in looking like life had chewed him up, this old guy in a threadbare coat. Hands cracked, eyes red from 1,000 sleepless nights. He slid into a booth, stared at the menu like it was written in a foreign language. I knew that look. Hunger fighting shame. I brought him a cup of coffee before he asked. He whispered thank you like it cost him something. When the check came, he hesitated, patting empty pockets. That's when I slid my own hand over the bill. "Let me cover it, sir." "Everyone falls on hard times," I said, softly. My stomach was a knot. I couldn't afford to be generous, but something in his eyes felt like looking in a mirror. He shook his head, voice hoarse. "You don't even know me." "That's not the point," I said, trying to smile. "I know what it's like to not have enough." For a second, the diner got real quiet. Just me, him, and the clatter of dishes in the back. Then I heard it, the heavy stomp of boots. Stanley. The manager was coming. Big man in a red polo stretched too tight, always smelling of fryer grease and cheap cologne. He stopped at our table, nostrils flaring. "What the hell's going on here?" He barked loud enough to turn heads. I stood a little taller. He couldn't pay, so I was going to cover it. "With what?" Stanley sneered. "Tips from old ladies and pity coins." He eyed the old man like he was gum on his shoe. "I told you before, girl, this ain't a charity. Please, it's only $15. He cut me off, leaning close enough for me to smell the onions on his breath. "You people always think you can bend the rules. Don't use that skin of yours like a shield." That one hit like a slap. My hands trembled, but I kept my voice steady. "I'm not trying to bend anything. I'll pay it myself." Stanley's face twisted into a grin I'd seen 100 times, mocking, daring me to push back. "Pack your things. You're done. Out." "No. Please, Stanley. I need this job." I whispered, tears starting despite my best effort. The old man tried to speak up. "Sir, this was my fault." "Shut up," Stanley snapped. "You walked in here smelling like the gutter couldn't afford an omelet, and now you think you're noble." I untied my apron, folded it slow, cheeks burning with humiliation. "I'm sorry this happened," I murmured to the man. He shook his head. "You have nothing to be sorry for." And then his voice changed, deep calm, with a quiet command. "I believe that's enough." Stanley laughed, thinking he'd scared him off. "What did you just say?" The man reached into his coat, pulled out a sleek card holder, slid out a badge. Jonathan R. Kane, founder and chairman, New Horizons Hospitality. A billionaire tycoon, the owner of the diner chain. Phones came out, whispers ricocheted around the booths. Stanley's face went pale. You're... Yes, Jonathan said evenly, setting the card on the table. "I own this diner. And I watched you humiliate a woman for an act of kindness. I watched you insult her race, her dignity. As of this moment, you're relieved of your duties." Stanley's mouth opened, but no words came. Jonathan turned to me, his tone softening. "Miss Reed, I owe you an apology. Not just for what you endured today, but for allowing a man like him to hold authority in my company." He paused. "As of today, I'd like to offer you a position at our executive office. We're building a new department, community ethics, and I believe it would benefit from your voice." The diner erupted in applause. Me. I just stood there, stunned, apron still in my hand. That night back in my apartment, I stared at the cream-colored envelope his assistant had delivered, my name written in perfect black ink. Inside was a job offer that made my knees go weak. It wasn't just the money. It was the note clipped to the back. "Thank you for reminding me what integrity looks like. The world needs more Monicas. J.K." The next morning, I rode an elevator 37 floors up in a midtown skyscraper, heart pounding like a jazz solo. The building smelled like leather and expensive coffee. A receptionist smiled. "Mr. Kane is expecting you." His office was big but not gaudy, flooded with sunlight. He stood when I walked in, clean-shaven now, suit-tailored, but the same watchful eyes. "You reminded me why I started this company," he said. "I expected to find inefficiencies when I went undercover. Instead, I found courage. I didn't feel brave, I admitted. I felt scared. But I couldn't stand there and do nothing." "That's exactly why you're here," he said. "I want you to help rebuild what we lost people community respect." I swallowed hard. "I've never led anything. You know how to listen. You know how to stand up. The rest you'll learn. And you won't be alone." That was the first day of my new life. Within a week, I was on a plane to Chicago to audit a troubled New Horizons diner. I went in quiet jeans and a blazer, blending with the staff. I saw how the manager barked at servers, how the only black waitress got the toughest tables, while a new white hire got breaks. I listened in corners at soda machines by back doors. By the third day, I'd seen enough. I walked into his office, showed my badge, and said, "You're on administrative leave pending investigation." He laughed until he saw the corporate seal. That afternoon, I told the staff, "I can't promise miracles, but change starts here, and it starts now." The youngest waitress, eyes wet, whispered, "No one's ever believed us before." Over the next year, I became a storm in heels. Richmond, Birmingham, Trenton. Each city held its own secrets. I met dishwashers who hadn't been paid in weeks. Hostesses forced to smile through harassment, cooks told to know their place. Each time I documented, suspended, and rebuilt. Each time I remembered that day in Newark, the apron, the humiliation, the applause. But the deeper I dug, the darker it got. A regional supervisor named Brennan Clark had been quietly covering up the worst abuses, settlements, shredded complaints, secret transfers. I traced it back through years of records connecting dots. No one wanted connected. When we finally had enough evidence, I stood at a press conference and said the words, "No one in our industry had dared. We failed you. We allowed harm to thrive. No more." Cameras flashed. Survivors came forward. And for the first time, executives looked ashamed. Of course, they tried to sideline me, offered me fancy titles with no power, tried to turn me into a mascot. In the boardroom, I said, "I don't need a title. I need teeth." Jackson Kane backed me up. Either give her authority or prepare for a reckoning. They relented. That's when we started building something bigger than policy. Survivor funds, whistleblower protections, anonymous hotlines. We found people who'd been erased, like Rochelle, a cook who kept a ledger of under-the-table abuse, or Isabel, an undocumented prep worker who vanished after filing a complaint. We tracked them down, gave them legal help, put their names back into the record. Some nights were terrifying. Anonymous threats in my inbox. A dead rat left at my door. SUVs following me through city streets. But by then, it was too late to scare me back into silence. For every threat, another worker found the courage to speak. For every door slammed, another ledger, another witness, another truth. And then one spring afternoon, standing under budding trees in Harlem, I watched hundreds gather for the first National Day for Restaurant Worker Dignity. Survivors I'd met across the country stood on stage. Rochelle, Isabel, kids who used to hide in walk-in freezers to escape managers, janitors who'd swept floors for decades without a single thank you. They were visible now, whole. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the mic and told them the truth. This started with a cup of coffee and a $15 meal. It started with refusing to look away. I held up the plaque they'd given me an ethics award and said, "This doesn't belong to me. It belongs to you." The crowd clapped, but it wasn't a movie ending. It was a heartbeat, a living thing. Because even now there are more names buried in files, more people waiting to be found, more silence to break. I don't tell this story to make myself a hero. I tell it because maybe you're sitting at a counter somewhere thinking no one notices your kindness, thinking it won't matter. Maybe you're the janitor, the waitress, the cook, the kid bussing tables, the one who sees everything but feels invisible. I promise you, one small act of courage can set off a chain reaction you can't even imagine. So I'll leave you with this. When you hear about someone being mistreated at work, or you see it with your own eyes, what do? Do you step in? Do you stay silent? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you think is right, what you've witnessed, where the line should be drawn. Because justice doesn't live in boardrooms or press releases. It lives in us, in what we're willing to risk for a stranger. And that's how a waitress from Newark ended up changing an empire, one bill, one voice, one forgotten worker at a time.